I'll introduce your moderator. Awesome person from CoinDesk TV, Jenn Sanasie. And I have an extra mic, so I'm going to hand it to you, Codie, because I see that you're empty-handed. Jenn, I'm going to let you take it away from here. Thanks.
Okay, it is. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? No, right? Hold on. I think I need to press on. Is this better? Okay, it is my fault that we were all sitting and lounging so nicely, but it is so hot here. I'm Jenn Sanasie. I am a host on CoinDesk TV, amongst many other things, but let's get into introducing our panelists today. Karim, you're going last because I know that you are an investor in the bad bitch empire, and so you go last. The ladies go first here today. So we have Cathy Hackl all the way on the end. She's the Chief Metaverse Officer at Journey. Beside me, we have Codie Sanchez. She's the founder at Contrarian Thinking. And of course, we have Karim Nurani. He's been here all day. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Linqto. Before we get into talking about Web3 and the bubble, I think there are so many ways to define this bubble and so many different bubbles that maybe are about to burst. I want to give each one of you a chance to introduce our audience to what it is that you do. So Cathy, let's start with you.
There we go. It's on now. Okay. Cathy Hackl, Chief Metaverse Officer and co-founder at Journey. I've been in metaverse-related industries for over 8 years, so I've been here for a while. It's not like I read a book and all of a sudden I know about the metaverse now. I've been working in all sorts of companies like VR hardware, Magic Leap, which many of you guys know probably, and left AWS to launch my own consultancy at the beginning of last year. Got acquired in 10 months. So sold my company in 10 months. Woo, yeah. And now I'm a co-founder at Journey, including many different projects. And I am popularly known as the godmother of the metaverse, so I can kind of share why that is. But yeah, just thrilled to be here to talk about the bubble or bubbles or a bubble. So.
Nope, I'm next. Hi, I'm Codie Sanchez. I run Contrarian Thinking. We're a media company, one of the fastest growing in the finance niche. When it comes to metaverse, the angle that I have is that I run a venture capital fund that focuses on technology to what I would call the real world, boring businesses. And so we run a group of portfolio companies that do about $35 million in revenue and have investments in about 65 different companies that aren't our wholly owned entities. And the idea is, how can we add technology? How can we add blockchain? How can we add some components, perhaps, of what's happening in the metaverse to things even as simple as a laundromat?
It's going to be difficult to keep up with all of that. But here, CSO of Linqto, and we're looking for Codie's companies to get on the platform so that all of us as accredited investors can invest in their success. Some of the companies that you're working on the metaverse are companies that we want to bring on our platform. It's a marketplace platform that we invest in these companies. As a primary investor, we're on the cap table of some of the companies you see here. We were in Robinhood, Coinbase, Ripple, Kraken. So we're primary investors. What we do then is open the back end on unit SPV so that the rest of you as accredited investors can invest alongside us. So the value proposition is we make decisions that we stand by, and hopefully we win. And if we win, we all win together. So that's what we do at Linqto. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Karim, we're going to start with you. Before we started this panel, you had a really beautiful way of describing a bubble. And so I want to just start with that so we can set the stage. When you think of bubble, what comes to mind?
So remember when we were all young and we had this little thing and it created little bubbles? And some of them were small, large, and some burst. Some of them joined and became double bubbles, and some of them became triple bubbles. And how beautiful that was, right? So it all becomes the question of the question is, are bubbles bad? Are bubbles good? Really, it depends on which side of the bubble you're on. So bubbles are intrinsic descriptors of what's happening and what's happening quickly. The question is, how do you separate the large bubbles that are going to burst? And depending on where you are in that bubble, it's a good thing or a bad thing. Just depends where you are in that bubble.
Cathy, when you hear that description, What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
No, I hold on. Gotta press power every time. I definitely agree. I think it really depends on where you are in the bubble, how it's affecting you. I think, and we were talking about this before the panel. It's like sometimes people say, right now is the best time to launch something because the only way is up. If this is the floor, there's only a way up. So I don't know. I definitely agree with that. I think that there is something there. A lot of potential opportunities. I will say from my own personal perspective, I was working at Magic Leap, in what I call my dream job. I went in thinking it was the next Apple, got married to the company, and then during the pandemic, they laid off 50% of the employees, including myself. And for me, it was like a divorce that I didn't want because my identity was so tied to that company. But that actually helped me figure out, okay, I'm going to launch off on my own. I'm going to do my own thing because the only way is up. Right. So I do think that sometimes these bubbles cost a lot of pain, but also a lot of creativity and a lot of opportunity for people that are ready to maybe go and do something. So there is a positive side in that sense.
Yeah. Codie, we're very crypto inclined, I think, in this audience. And you see things through a little bit of a different lens. When we talk about bubbles, what comes to mind?
Well, I think categorically, if you look at it from a numerical perspective, when an entire market erupts like a bubble does, it's bad. It's bad for everybody. It's typically bad for the little guy. The people who make money post a bubble collapse are usually the institutional investors who have a lot of cash on the sidelines. But for most people, post 2008, it is categorically harder to recuperate your investment than it is to de-risk yourself, have less downside, and continue to grow it. And when people look at the mathematical models, they don't realize that if you lose 75%, you don't have to, you can't just have your investment grow by 75% in order to recuperate all of your downside. And so I think today there's been a bubble that's burst obviously quite a bit in, let's say, NFT land. But it seems so early to me that, to your point, these things seem linked, right? So you have your first maybe small crash or market correction, and then you might have a secondary market correction. And I think the winners will be those who didn't over allocate to greed and are able to allocate when everyone else is fearful. And so over the next, let's call it 3 to 5 years, I think we will have some of the best vintage returns ever. But retail investors typically don't benefit from that because they don't go in when things are scary. They go in when everybody's FOMOing.
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring up NFTs because I think a lot of people have been waiting for this NFT bubble to burst. And every day we're more and more surprised that it hasn't, right? There's a report that came out by DAP Radar recently that said despite the current conditions of the market, NFTs are still booming. The growth in the NFT industry is still continuing. And the report suggested that NFTs would decouple from crypto financial services the same way that traditional art has decoupled from the S&P 500. Cathy, as someone who is focused on the metaverse, is the NFT bubble going to burst the way that I think maybe a lot of people in this audience are just like waiting every day, like this thing's going to burst? Or do you agree with that?
I think it's such a weird market right now. I'm an NFT collector myself. So, and this is on, I don't know why it doesn't work. But, yeah, take yours? Okay. So I'm an NFT collector myself. I like to diversify myself in many different ways. So most of my NFTs, even though they're lower in value, they've retained a relatively good value. I could still flip one of them and make more than what I bought them for. I do think the market was overdue for some type of correction. What is currently happening, I have no idea. Goblin Town, all of us are gonna die. Those NFTs are like going crazy. People are buying them. There's no roadmap. So what I thought once was kind of like the basis for a solid NFT, now the market's proving that it's completely different. So I don't know if it's a reaction to everything that's happening, but if you look at the ones that are in the rankings, it baffles me, right? It baffles me. That being said, my Mutant Ape and all my other blue chips are pretty solid right now, and so I don't know. It's just I don't even understand Goblin Town and everything. I don't know does everyone know what that is? No, some people do. It's an NFT. It's an NFT project that launched. What was it? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? They no promotion, no Discord, no roadmap. Just these goblins. The Twitter Spaces where people making noises like goblins, and they sold out. They're like what? I don't even know what the floor is right now, but it's ridiculous. So I don't know. Yeah, just look into it because it's baffling.
I just also want to let all three of you know that feel free to butt in at any time. Don't wait for my questions if you have something to add. Karim, you talk to a lot of investors. You go to a lot of different conferences. How are they feeling about NFTs? How are the investors in your network?
So I'll take over from what you just said. If you don't understand it, why are you even looking at it? Does it make sense to you? The fundamental value of your investments should be based on your theory of investment, your thesis for return. When we look at NFTs, and we started talking about NFTs about a year and a half ago on our Linqto Learn sessions, the first NFT was sold for like $69 million. Well, how does that make any sense, right? But as we go deeper into the infrastructure of NFTs, and Jenn, you were one of them when we were talking about the companies that you're building, the value in the NFT to us would be the enterprise companies that are building the smart contracts, and the utility of that, the utility of the royalty to creators and artists. So you look at the infrastructure layer, NFTs make sense. If you think of it as a JPEG and noise, I mean, you've got to worry about the rug pull, right? And some of the coins that are suffering today, it's just like, what value? It's just hype, right? So that's what we think about.
But some people can have fun too. Like I collect for fun because I like it, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, you put a portion of your funds away and don't join a golf membership and have at it, right? So,
Codie, what do you think?
I like to invest to make money, not to have fun. So,
Codie, we're
you're having fun making money.
you can still
make
have fun.
money.
I like my bottom line high and my bank account full. So maybe I'm old school, but if it comes to something art related, I can get on board with that. I've certainly bought projects from an art perspective that I thought were interesting, but never in all of my years have I bought art because I thought that the price of the art I bought today will be higher at a future date. And given the fact that even Masterworks, one of the largest fractionalized art investing platforms out there, only does like $1 billion in trades, tells me that most people do not buy art based on price speculation. That's just not how we humans use it yet. Now, could we in the future? Perhaps. But I think you have to decouple the two. So if you like the piece of art, in its technological framework, interesting. If it is an investment, then be rigorous, to your point. Be incredibly rigorous on why this type of asset is going to be more valuable in the future than it is today. And hype should never be in the equation unless you are a first mover and you truly think that the next guy who's going to hold the bag will buy from you at a cheaper price. But that trade never really lasts well. It's musical chairs. And so I actually think that the NFT market is super interesting. I have some friends that are building companies like Legends. She has an NFT that is utilized in the travel space. It's pretty incredible, but it is utility based. It is not because I'm going to buy that NFT from her at 100x higher next week. That I don't think is reasonable.
I feel like you just told us all have fun staying poor in so many words. Well, I think, Codie, based on what you're saying, sure, financially a lot of people can lose in the bubble, but thank you. Oh, it works again. But the end user doesn't, right? We're figuring it out. We're building utility. It's not only about the art, but it's about the infrastructure that is built around, and it's still early days. I think we're probably all going to hear that so much over the next 3 days, but it's still early. Let's talk about the metaverse. A lot of money piling into the metaverse, but not a lot of users, right? I mean, some numbers came out recently on metaverse users, and they were dismal. They were dismal. No one uses the metaverse, and if you've gone in there, it feels like you're in some 1990s game, and you can go forwards and backwards and bump into people, maybe visit a weird casino, and then exit. And I'm sure that triggers you, Cathy. But
It
what do you
doesn't. I
think?
agree. The metaverse is not here yet. like the metaverse, as I understand it, having worked at HTC Vive, which does VR hardware, having worked at a Magic Leap, which is spatial computing, and then AWS cloud computing, doing large scale gaming simulations, the metaverse is not here. So like those are metaverse platforms or meta proto platforms that we're talking about, right? The metaverse that I envision is not going to be here for the next 10 years. And the value and the opportunity is in building the infrastructure, right? And that's where blockchain NFTs play a big part. So I'm not disheartened by the numbers, right? Because it's decentralized, like it's a metaverse platform or something, but like the vision of the metaverse that I have encompasses both the virtual world, but also the physical world. And to me, that physical world, when you truly converge those two, when that truly happens, that is a giant unlock for opportunities for anyone, for many people. So, and is it going to be, the question I always get is like, is it glasses? Is it contacts? I don't know. Only Apple knows, I guess, whatever they bring to market. But yeah, it'll be probably some type of wearable, but that further convergence of physical and digital to me is the holy grail that unlocks the metaverse. It is not here yet. Like we're building towards it. So anyone that says that it's here right now, not in that greater vision of what a lot of us envision.
So I would say the imagination rules in this case, right? So if you don't have an imagination of what the future can look like, you lose out of so much in life, right? So we've been talking about NFTs on our Link to Learn sessions for almost 2 years now, and I still hadn't grasped the value of it. I was in Lisbon for the Global Investor Conference, and we did this virtual tour. We had seen Sintra and Cascais and Lisbon and all the castles and the statues physically. And then I went into this experience where it was a visual thing. And all of a sudden you start putting the visual thing with the potential of your experience in it through the metaverse. And it unlocks the power of potentially how education experiences, even investment strategies can change once you start imagining what this future looks like. Now, I agree with you. Like when Meta says, hey, we've put $1 billion towards this and we'll have something profitable in 2025, that's unbelievable. Their stock price is not going to go up because of that. It's a little bit longer, I would say another 7 to 10 years from today. But the imagination is there for a future metaverse, I think.
I just want to pipe in really quick to say, part of me thinks the metaverse is actually here. It's just, look at this scenario we're in right now. We have an audience of, I don't know how many thousands or hundreds of thousands online. We're actually talking to these cameras, the people to decide like, hey, what's up? But there's 6 of you. And so like, what are we? Are we in physicality? Are we in more of an online metaverse situation? Because we come to a house to talk to a computer, right? It's a bizarre thing to ponder. And then if you think about it from a Twitter perspective or a phone usage perspective, I like to track how much I'm on my phone, and my waking hours are dominated by time spent in screen as opposed to off screen. And so perhaps this world of metaverse where we actually go into it and we have our glasses on or our contacts or whatever it is in the future is actually missing the point, which is if you were to take away young kids, and I'm not that young. If you were to take away my phone and my computer and all of my technology in which I have a life that really is not touched by the outside world, that would mess with me. And so I actually think it's happening way faster than I, as a hardcore PE original investor, ever anticipated.
It's so funny. When you started that, I was like, oh, is she going to go full Matrix on us? Is she going to say we're already in the metaverse? This is a simulation. Oh, gosh. I think you're absolutely right. And I think when we talk about the metaverse, we forget what the kids are doing. We forget what the generation below us is doing. They're in Roblox. They're in Fortnite. They're already doing a lot of the things that we're saying you have to dream about, right? Karim, when you're thinking about this from an investor perspective and you're saying, like, you need to be able to dream it, you need to be able to imagine it, it's not something tangible. What are the challenges there?
So that's that's huge. But keeping in mind that we've got the benefit of having defined our market, which is the infrastructure companies, right? And so we start to pay attention to who's doing what. And if we look at the Web 3.0 and the metaverse and the blockchain, it's easier for us to look at the companies that are run by visionaries and innovators and a leadership team that is building towards something, but they've worked out the dots about the potential side rails that's going to derail this company or this opportunity, and have seen a level of return that makes sense to us. When we look at investments, it's not that longer term investments because like Codie says, it's like I want to make money today. Well, today maybe tomorrow or next month or 12 months down the road. And that's what we're looking for as well. So imagination is great. It gives us something to hang our hat on. But the fundamentals of any business are the fundamentals of any business. That's what we pay attention to.
So where do we go from here? I think there was a story that came out this morning. Galaxy Digital's Mike Novogratz said 2/3 of all crypto hedge funds are not going to exist. Coinbase has layoffs, Gemini layoffs, UST has happened. I think a lot of people would say these are all indicators of an industry that might not make it, and we are at the tip of that bubble. Codie, where do we go from here?
It's not just crypto or blockchain. I mean, Carvana is arguably one of the largest car companies in the world, depending on how you slice it, and laid off 2,500 people. You know, if you follow layoffs.io, you see that on average we've had anywhere from a 30 to 70% increase in layoffs across the startup sphere over the last 3 to 6 weeks. And so this is generalized recession in my view. I mean, the technical term of a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth. I think that we will probably hit that. It'll be interesting to see one way or the other. Now, we might, change it based on what the government decides to do one way or the other, but I don't think this industry is going away. And I'm not like, as you guys can tell, I'm not some screaming advocate, that's running around with my monkey apes, whatever. This is how much I know about this.
Don't say monkey apes, whatever.
Well, me and Elon Musk, I thought that was hysterical when he changed his Twitter profile and said, looks pretty fungible to me. But anyway, so I'm not a huge raving lunatic for the industry, but I do see the utility overall. And so I do not think this industry is going anywhere, but do I think the entire world, and certainly the US, is going to feel some pain over the next year? Absolutely. I don't think there's any way to print the type of money we've printed, to speculate the way we've speculated, and not have pain follow.
Some mic drop right there. Cathy?
Panel's over. It's your mic drop. And there's like a giant eagle or something up there. I don't know. I can hear it. Woo. Yeah, I mean, for me, the work I do is not only in NFTs and blockchain. I do a lot of work in virtual worlds and many different strategies, right, with the brands I work with. I agree. I think that there's definitely going to be pain, right? There's going to be pain. Right now, my company, thankfully, is in hypergrowth. We're very lucky, because we're in that space. What I will say, and this is kind of a little bit separate from what we're talking about, but I do want to make a point at something that I think in the Web 1, Web 2.0 eras, adult entertainment was leading. Like, what was like, if it's innovating, like that's where we're heading there. And I think in this new era, what I'm seeing, at least from the work I do with all the brands I work with, like, Louis Vuitton and Ralph Lauren and all of them, is that fashion, art, and architecture are really pushing the limits of some of these technologies. And I think that's a big statement. It's a beautiful statement in my perspective, right? Of kind of where the innovation is right now and who's willing to take those risks. Like you see Gucci, for example, taking risks all the time. Balenciaga, they've got the appetite to do it, but it's beautiful that it's fashion, right? And also as the role I play in the industry, right? I feel that it's wonderful that the metaverse has someone called the godmother of the metaverse. And that's a title that someone from Nike's metaverse team gave me. Yeah, let's go. It doesn't have a king and it doesn't have a godfather yet, even though some people call Neil Stephenson the godfather. But I think that there is a sea change in my perspective that it's not going to be, and you can see it in this panel. This is not the traditional people that speak at a tech conference. And I want to applaud Jordan for that, because I do think that there is a bit of a sea change when it comes to these technologies, who's benefiting from them, and who's really, pushing the innovation. So totally not related to the bubble, but related to where I see this going and something I'm very passionate about.
So I would like to add, there's always going to be correction, and we're in that. And it's just part of the course. Look back, pull up your lens, go back to the 1970s or 1900s. There's always a course correction in the development of the upwards to the right, and that's going to happen. But I think what's really interesting about today's day, actually, if you go back and see some of the sessions that we talked about earlier on in the day with other panelists, there is, like you said, there's a lot of opportunities in these new emerging technologies. And if we pull ourselves out of the US and look at it globally of what's happening and the adoption rate and the kinds of population that are adopting different things, even monkey apes or or penguins, or what did you call that?
Goblins.
Goblins, right? So the utility of that stuff exists, but the question is, where does it work? What is the technology that works? Where is it being adopted? Globally, we need to pay attention to the trends.
Yeah, Karim, I think you set the stage so nicely for us. There's so much innovation happening in the space, and some bubbles will connect, and some will burst, and some will continue to float on, and we are just in the midst of it all. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives with us today on this panel. I think you've given our audience a lot to think about, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more big round of applause. One of a kind, Jenn, Sanasie, Codie, Sanchez, Karim, Nurani, Cathy, Hackl. Keep a lookout for them. Follow them on social. I know I follow Codie's stuff too, and it's the bomb. You really have to check it out.